Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Well, today we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. Now, before I start, I want to read to you some articles in the mainstream media, both here in the West and obviously from the Ukraine as well. So in the last 24 hours, there was a fairly large Russian missile strike targeting Ukrainian military sites and infrastructure, critical infrastructure. The Ukrainians claim that they were able to shoot down most of the drones, which were 32 kamikaze drones. They also claim to have shot down about 50% of the inbound cruise missiles. This is what the Ukrainians are claiming. We cannot verify that. Now, also as well, the Russians used S-300s and reportedly S-400 type systems in a ground attack role. Now, those systems, those S-300s, were always a dual-use system. They even became more prevalent in terms of being able to use those systems in a ground attack role as more and more S-400 regiments came online. So it's a fairly accurate weapon. It does have the ability to travel at obviously at high Mach to hit targets. It's very fast, and some would consider it near hypersonic. Type of, or at least a high sonic type of attack system that can be used against ground targets. Its only drawback, it doesn't have a very large warhead. Now, additionally, here's another one. U.S. mauls letting Ukraine hit targets in Russia. U.S. mauls letting Ukraine hit targets in Russia. Biden may lift ban on U.S. weapons use in Russia amid pressure. This is out of Sweden. Sweden's getting a little nervous. Sweden gives the Ukraine AWACS planes, but no Gripen fighter jets. I wonder if the Swedes are starting to rethink what is happening out of concern of how this could escalate. Strikes on Russia. There is no restriction on Ukraine using U.S. supplied air defenses. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, and I don't even know why that would have to be messaged in that manner. And then finally, Russia warns NATO about allowing Ukraine to hit Russian territory with Western supplied weapons. So let's go into that article very quickly, and let's have a closer look at what is being said. Moscow, the Kremlin once again warned Ukraine's allies against allowing Kiev to hit Russian territory using Western weapons. With President Vladimir Putin's spokesman promising consequences if such strikes were to occur. It will ultimately be very damaging to the interests of those countries that have chosen the path of escalating tensions. The question of whether to let Kiev use Western weapons to hit military targets in Russia has loomed larger as fighting intensifies along certain sections of the Ukraine-Russian border. Kiev is especially struggling to halt Russian offensive operations in the northeastern Kharkov region. Foreign ministers from 32 countries of the NATO defensive alliance, notice how they stipulate NATO defensive alliance. I'll say that again, NATO defensive alliance. Now let's harken back to Libya. Let's go back to the Yugoslavian wars, in which Yugoslavia was not threatening, or rather Serbia was not threatening any NATO nation state, but yet the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, this defensive alliance, came to the aid of a group of Albanian terrorists operating in Kosovo. Very interesting. But it's a defensive alliance. Absolutely. Now, what weapons are they talking about when they say that they are contemplating allowing these Western weapons to be used? And we've talked about this before. It's the ATACMS, it is the Storm Shadow, the Scalp. These are European-designed cruise missile systems with very long range, with certain stealth aspects as well, low observability aspects to avoid radar detection in some cases. Now, the Russians have been able to shoot down the Scalp. They've been able to shoot down the Storm Shadow. They've also been able to shoot down ATACMS as well. But some get through, right? The area of Russia from the Ukrainian border, hundreds of miles deep into the rear of the conflict, is a very large country, and it's very difficult to cover this entire region with air defense systems 24/7. So there are opportunities where the Ukrainians, in conjunction with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to strike targets deep inside of the Russian Federation. So what are the Russian options? Well, the Russians could go after Western European targets. To say that it is improbable that the war will not expand, I really believe you are misleading yourself if you believe that. And what's further concerning for me is the competency levels of individuals over at the U.S. State Department, in some cases the civilian leadership within the Department of Defense, even certain military leaders as well. I have great concern, especially when they are sitting before Congress and they are asked certain questions like, what is a woman? And they don't have the ability to answer that question because their political ideology is so ingrained that it offends their sensibility simply to answer a basic, almost yes or no question, black and white question as you possibly can get. And these are the same, this is the same political leadership that is pushing us towards an eventual war with Russia, and in all probability eventually we'll be at war with China as well. But I would assume that Russia is making contingency plans for possible critical infrastructure strikes against Western European targets, especially if Russia is attacked by these Western weapon systems. Also, you have to understand that weapon systems that are not open source, weapon systems that you could say are experimental, still in the top secret stage of development, are reportedly being used in this conflict. There are obviously weapon systems that are being tried that are still in the developmental stages of this conflict that are being used now in this war. Now look, that's happened in most wars, and this war is no different than many other wars. It's just simply a war right now that we're watching in which could become a global war, a global conflict. The Russians are still preparing contingency plans for the use of battlefield tactical nuclear weapons. Look, humans have never made or developed a weapon that they have never used. As soon as nuclear weapons were able to be used in conflict, and the conflict was so dire at the time that the political leadership during World War II here in the United States felt that nuclear weapons needed to be used. And I have to say that there are elements in the Russian leadership right now that in all probability feel that given Western support to the Ukrainians, given the deployment of NATO forces into Finland, the Baltic states, based on how NATO has acted in the past, again, going back into Libya, going back into Kosovo, Serbia, that is the Russian perception. They do not see the NATO alliance as purely a defensive organization, because it is absolutely not that. It has been used outside the scope of defending Western Europe. Libya was not in Western Europe. Kosovo had nothing to do with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Absolutely nothing. It was more akin to a very large-scale policing operation that had to occur inside of Kosovo by the Serbian paramilitaries and elements of the Serbian military as well. So here we go. Russia practicing the use of tactical nuclear weapons, saying outright, hey, you strike inside of Russia, there are going to be consequences. This is how wars escalate. Now, I got to tell you, if Russia starts detonating tactical nuclear weapons and the war expands, where it will expand to, it's difficult to say, but it's a powder keg. And if it expands, and if for some reason there is even a nuclear detonation that does not involve casualties, I think it's highly probable we could see the fall of the current political leadership inside the U.S. government, especially if the United States and Western Europe goes into open war against the Russians. I don't think the people of the United States wants an open war with Russia. I don't think Western Europe wants an open war against the Russians. And if that happens, I truly believe you're going to see a change in political leadership in many of these Western states. It's going to be cataclysmic. No one wants this, especially if we go down the nuclear rabbit hole. And it's highly likely we could do that. Highly likely. So here we are. We will continue to watch what is happening on the ground. We continue to watch the Russian offensive take place in Kharkov. Again, the Russian tactic right now is to fix and destroy. And that's what it is doing. It is degrading the Russian military. But we do anticipate further offensive operations by the Russian military in other areas within the theater of operations. So again, we will continue to monitor. Thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. As always, have a good day.